It seems the people at IFAB, the organisation that makes football's decisions, are sitting in meetings, virtually back-to-back meetings, all the time in Zurich these days. Because after discussions over sin bins, they've now moved on to discussing proposals for referees to be given the power to stop matches for official, quotes, cooling off periods if players are feuding or if tempers on the pitch get out of control. This is all in an effort to get better player behaviour on the field of play. But this is for real. This is no joke. IFAB are considering cooling off periods. Everybody take a break in play. You calm down over there. You calm down over there. And then after a few minutes, we'll restart the game. Are we really talking about players being sent to the naughty corner on the field of play? Back in November, IFAB's chief executive, the boss, Lucas Brud, told us that their organisation's next big priority was tackling player behaviour.
It's a sport. The football culture has forgotten that it is a sport. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be joyful. It's a very important matter to us. We are starting to identify areas and potentially test areas of the laws of the game, of new laws of the game, or recommendations or guidelines to make sure we really combat this poor part of the game, which is bad behavior, is unfair behavior, mass confrontation, referee being, assaulted in grassroots level, amateur level. But what we see across the globe is a major problem and a major risk to the game. So as a football fan and as the CEO of IFAB, I believe that things have to change.
Now, Danny, you played the game. Can you imagine this? And they're serious about it. But it's because of dissent and players feuding on the field of play that's brought this about. So it's you, the players, that have really caused this situation in the eyes of IFAB. But that's what they're talking about. Right, calm down. You lot stand there. You lot stand there. We'll resume the game in a couple of minutes when you've all cooled down. That's what they're proposing.
So what he's suggesting is punishing those players who can behave and have the emotional intelligence to be disciplined and keep the cool. And we'll stop the game. We'll drop the passion levels. We'll try and make it really subdued so everyone's happy and
a
content.
Cooling off period.
It's absolutely nonsensical. It's ridiculous. They must have very little to do. They're trying to justify their existence, it sounds like, by coming up with some of this crap.
No, they're trying to make you lot realise there's a difference between passion and abuse.
As I said earlier in the year, I was all for the beginning of the season, the referees dishing out cards to players who start remonstrating quickly, getting in the face, all for it. Get rid of the petulance. Going over to booking the managers, booking the coaches, booking the players. As soon as you're petulant, get them booked. And they're doing it better.
Go card happy.
Just do your job properly as a ref.
But you're against sin bins too.
Because that is, look, football's entertainment. All you're going to get with sin bins, all you're going to get is one team and they'll work on it in training quickly. You're a player down, you drop off. You're just going to have training game. You'll have 10-minute spells in games where it's like a training practice. You'll have one team defending and one team attacking. And everyone will just do it. You'll automatically fall into a low block to get through that 10 minutes. That's exactly what will happen. The other problem you've got with sin bins is you're just throwing more problems for the officials to throwing it in the mix in terms of subjective decisions. And I'll give you a quick example.
Absolutely right.
If I'm running in on goal, because professional fouls is one of these things they're talking about, sin bins, tactical foul they call it.
Right.
On occasion, they're very obvious when someone's running ahead of you, you trip them up knowing you'll take a yellow to stop them. Fine, that's easy. What about the one where you're running with somebody and you clip them accidentally and they go over? It's a foul. What you're going to get is 50% of referees going, that was accidentally on purpose, and another 50% going, not sure it was. Then a team is left without a player for 10 minutes because of this new initiative.
Because confusion reigns.
Yeah, and then what you're going to get is you're just going to get possibly 30 minutes of a game where one or the other team is sat as a low block, because not like rugby, 14 against 15, you can get away with it a bit more. I know it's still relevant. One player less in a game of football of two teams with equal quality is hugely significant. The whole dynamic of football will change with sin bins. It will be an absolute joke as a spectacle.
But it gives the referee the authority that they need.
They've got it.
They've got it already.
They've got it already.
They've got it already.
And the best ones use it
How
really.
have they got it already?
Well, let me ask you this:
They've
how
got
many
yellow
times
card
this
and red
season?
cards.
How many times this season Do you remember a free-for-all on the pitch where the ref lost control and actually we go, oh, God, he should be in the sin bin?
Yeah.
When I don't remember one.
Well, this is the point I was going to make. I am absolutely in the camp of developing the opportunity to empower referees. Now, this is the other side of the argument, where you start to give quangos and you start to give people in positions of influence a reason to exist.
They run the game. They're not quangos.
It's
IFAB.
No, they implement the rules, and the rules are not universally accepted, and they're implemented in different ways in different leagues, including the implementation of VAR. Right. So let's have that as a placeholder. The problem is that when you look at the characterisation, I don't believe that I think the players in play behaviour could improve.
It's getting better. It's getting better.
It's a mile off that characterisation. This is not a plague on our house, the players' behaviour. This is nothing vaguely resembling what it was in the early 2000s, mid-90s, early 80s, where players felt it was their absolute gift to say what they want to whom they want. We are talking about these sorts of behaviours being the exception. So the characterisation of this fella at IFAB about this plague on the house of football that's ruining the game is rubbish for a start.
He's an idiot.
Right.
He's
The
talking
second
nonsense.
thing is there is nothing wrong with these guys kicking these ideas around, putting them into a column, right?
Yeah.
Strengths and weaknesses and outcomes, right? And opportunities and threats, a SWOT report, and going, okay, we've kicked that around, that don't work, out it goes, right? Nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's everything wrong with these sort of ideas being implemented. It's for the birds. To suggest that you're going to stop a high-octane football game. So what are you going to do now? You're going to take the spontaneity out of goals, because you can't fix that problem with VAR. You're going to take the spontaneity out of the game when the game's at high-octane levels. And you're going to put a sin bin in place. A player's get dissent. Stop fanning about with the sin bin. Give him a yellow card.
And if he does it
gives
twice,
again,
it's a
give him a red card.
But what
End
if
of
it boils
discussion.
over in the field of play and the referee wants to cool things down? This is what IFAB are talking about. What if it boils over? Danny kicks me, in comes my mate, he kicks him, Danny's mates pile in, blah, blah, blah.
But it doesn't happen very often.
Everybody,
Simon,
when
even if
it does...
even if it did, and like
also, if they implement this at the
That's
top of the
questionable.
game here, grassroots football might benefit.
forget grassroots and Premier League.
Oh, forget grassroots.
No,
How can you?
Well, you don't forget. When I say forget it, comparing it, because you're talking about an entertainment business which is worth hundreds of millions and billions of pounds at the top of the game that people go pay fortunes to go and watch. Sin bins at grassroots football, they do it in my boys' team. It can settle. Say sending a kid off, he goes off
Different
for a bit.
emotional maturity, different level of game.
No problem. No problem. It works to a degree, even though all the kids do is they all drop off and defend again. Like
but does one level of football not impact the other?
Well, it doesn't.
But with due respect, and whilst we've seen an instance recently with a fella jumping on the pitch, we haven't seen many instances of professional footballers walking up to a referee and breaking his ribs and punching his nose in and doing all that sort of stuff.
No, but let's go back to
the example that is set. Let me finish, Dan, and you take over.
Sorry.
The idea that everything that happens at professional football is mirrored at grassroots football, I don't necessarily agree. You want the best examples to be set. No one is punching referees on the face on a football pitch. So that argument that happens in grassroots football is not supported, but the behaviour of professional footballers should be better. This argument that if the referees have the prerequisite amount of authority on the pitch and people know that they have the authority and referees demand and command the respect of the players by having that authority and utilising it properly, you don't need a calling off period because these players will work it out pretty damn quick.
Well, that's all I was going to say. I mean, the example you talked about, Jim, where players are flying in and it's boiling over. What behaviour would produce an official or would make an official have a cooling off period that wouldn't also produce a yellow and red card? The boiling over bit, if you come over and push me to the ground, yellow or red.
You see, but this is what happens
when
anything's ever introduced to the game. VAR, never going to work, bin it.
Nobody said that at the beginning, though.
Never going to work, bin it. Cooling off periods, don't make me laugh. This is a reaction that happens here in this country. This is a really good message. Tell Danny, Jim, that the reasons that IFAB are looking at sin bins and timeouts is because player behaviour can be pretty horrible and abusive at times.
Well, let's name one in the Premier League that's been horrible this season.
That's a false
as soon as the
characterisation.
ref gives a second yellow for shouting at the ref, people like Danny cry that's 10 versus 11 and it spoilt the game.
But no, we haven't. We've seen it this season. Players have been sent off in the same game for 2 yellows for dissent. We've seen it and we've backed it up and said, well done. And it's stopping.
But what
you're
you're trying to engineer is a culture where you don't need sin bins and you don't need to send people off. And if you're going to do that, then you need to have the ultimate authority. And what you're doing is confusing it. And then you're conflating an issue by suggesting that whatever happens in professional football always mirrors itself at grassroots. And then what you're saying is the characterisation is football's out of control. And its biggest plague is player behaviour. No, it's part of challenges that football has. And there's nothing wrong with kicking these ideas around, and there's nothing also wrong with suggesting that, hang on a second, I was in favour of VAR. I still am. I think it's not worked the way it should do, and I think that IFAB are in part responsible for that. Right? And I look at these sort of ideas, and I don't just look at them and go, crap, and move on. I look at them in the rounds and have an analytical perspective and go, makes no sense. What you want to do is empower referees to control the pitch. And if referees are controlling the pitch properly, then these things will be nominal in terms of their frequency.
But also a cooling off.
That's a great
Jim,
message. Something needs to happen at the top to filter down to grassroots.
Cooling off period basically says to me that you're not punishing the offenders. You're giving them time to cool off. You're indulging it. You're indulging their behaviour. So what I said at the beginning is true. Those who can behave, Jim, if you've got a team of players that behave correctly and don't abuse the referee, the team that's behaving badly gets a bit of time to calm down. Well, where's the fairness in that?
I know, but it never stops. I mean, we heard Chris Wilder.
Give me an example in the Premier League.
Talking about an official who disrespected him by eating a sandwich in his company. I mean, it's
What's
all
that got
about
to do-
respect.
what's got nothing to-
There's not enough respect. I think we are
You have
agreed
to
that
earn
there's
respect.
not enough respect.
You have to demand and command respect. And in part, we are all complicit in enabling disrespect. Because every single show that constantly harps about individual decisions made by referees that are not accurate, every time a player's behaviour is condoned, oh, he's a good player, he should be able to get away with it because he's a good player. Every time the game condones those sort of things, you allow the culture of disrespect to manifest itself in people getting away with things they shouldn't. If referees referee games properly with authority and then the media allow them to do it rather than suggest that referees are becoming little Mussolinis, then you get a characterisation that's different. This is not common sense. This is overthinking the problem.
You'll never stop bad behaviour, overzealous and over-passionate players behaving badly. What you do is you punish it. You won't stop it, you punish it. And you punish it quickly and efficiently, and that's it.
No cooling off periods.
Well, then you're condoning good behaviour by letting them time. What we saying?
No sin bins.
Sin bins is the most ludicrous decision. The most ludicrous idea.
We should have a sin bin for bad broadcasters, shouldn't we?
No sin bins.
There'll be no one to do the show.
Exactly.
Well, there's Chris. He's very much in your two camps. Hi, guys. The referee. What's going to happen there? Will he play whale noises and light aromatherapy candles during the cooling off period?
Come out, yeah.
I don't know. But let's put it out there this morning. Lucas Brood, IFAB's chief exec, says player behaviour at times is out of control.
Well,
and they're discussing, next month, they're discussing a proposal for referees to be given the power to stop matches for official cooling off periods. This is what they're calling it. If players are feuding or if tempers on the pitch get out of control. A cooling off period.
Where are they discussing it? In a 5-star spa somewhere in Zurich where they all fly in on private jet?
They're discussing it in the offices in Zurich. A cooling off period. Are you having it? I mean, when you look at it, years of dissent and abuse has football brought this upon itself. Sin bins and cooling off periods. Craig's a big Leeds United fan. Craig, are you having either sin bins or cooling off periods?
No, none at all. They don't exist. What they need to do is enable all the referees to have the same technology as the referees in the Rugby Six Nations. Because if you look at that, no one apart from the captains of each team approaches the referee. They've got a camera there so we can identify the culprits, and then it stops. Simple as.
Yeah, we've said that before. I agree with you. Captain.
But
When
Craig,
the
Danny doesn't want any more technology, do you? You don't want any more technology.
a camera on the body of a referee is no problem. I think that's good, especially in the grassroots football. But in terms of when the respect the campaign started many years ago, and I was captain at Fulham, and for a good season or two, very few refs would entertain a conversation with anyone but the captain, and it worked smoothly. And it just lost its... I don't know why. It didn't...
Then everybody piled in.
What game now do you remember a mass... What was he saying, Lucas Brood? Talking about
Brood.
mass confrontation and, like players all... I haven't seen many of you.
I think it's basically to stop dissent, which is...
But we are giving more cards now, and the dissent in Premier League football especially, and professional football, is less than it's ever been. It must be, because they are throwing out cards like confetti at the moment. Rightly so if the dissent persists. But there are two different arguments here. One is eradicating really poor behaviour from youngsters in the game and putting a stop to that.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the exact same rules at under 13 and 12 football and 14 football that you do with elite football.
But one level influences the other.
Exactly.
The top level influences the pyramid
But
further down the pyramid.
where are these examples of this horrendous player behaviour this season?
Well, but it wouldn't be handy. If there was no reason to do it, they wouldn't do it.
So, okay, let's go back to the original point. Cooling off periods. Why are we thinking that we can let people off bad behaviour by giving them time to cool down? What a ridiculous contradiction.
Well, Ewan's a big Celtic fan and a regular in this show. Ewan, what do you think of it? Sin bins, one thing. Cooling off periods, another. Are you having either?
Yeah, morning, gents.
Hi, Ewan.
Simon, as usual, he's not often wrong, but he's right again. Just stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Use the powers that you've already got and just have the courage and the strength and your convictions to do it. And when they do it, the refs just need to be backed a little instead of ostracised and crucified for it. Danny as well needs to realise it's not just the Premier League. Look at all the chaos that's been happening in Turkey and things. Modern player behaviour has been a joke for months, years even, and it's just the cat's out the bag now and they're trying to rein it back in, so they're coming up with weird and wonderful ways of doing it, but you've got the powers there, just use them properly.
Well, I agree with you, but in Turkey was the owner coming on the pitch after.
Exactly.
I mean, not much. That's nothing to do with player behaviour. I mean, player behaviour. Yes, fair enough. I haven't seen a lot of foreign leagues football. I focus mainly on ours. I'm not seeing a rise in bad behaviour from players towards referees. If anything, it's completely the opposite I'm seeing, because they are being punished really quickly by the referees. And this is initiative from Howard Webb this season. We've seen it. It's been good.
But you said a moment ago, Simon, and Stephen, Manchester United fan, I'm coming to you. If something's worth debating and considering it, then have a discussion about it.
And that's what we're doing.
And they're going to do that next month in
And we are
Zurich.
now framing the conversation in such a way that we're looking at the nature of what they're proposing and looking at it through critical eyes rather than they've made their proposal. This is what they think. Now we're saying, well, hang on, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this?
Well, what about this then, Stephen? Big United fan. Sin bins, cooling off periods. Are you in any way in favour of them?
First of all, great show as always.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
No, well, I'm 51. I run and play for a Vets football team in the Cheshire League team where I live. I also, if I'm not playing, I referee. I referee kids games and I do open age adults as well. The kids games, the sin bins, I do use for that sole purpose is so they can go and talk to the coaches and calm them down so they can learn for the future. The adults, I don't use the sin bin. I think it's a stupid idea for the adults. For instance, if a team's 4-0 up and a player from the winning team is giving constant grief to the referee, giving them a 10-minute sin bin isn't going to affect the 4-0 result. A player going off for 10 minutes isn't going to affect a 4-0. They're not going to learn. The only way they're going to learn is to give them a yellow. And if they do it again, they get another yellow. And then that's a red.
Okay.
That way, it will affect that team. It might not affect the result, but it'll affect it moving forward because
Next
that
game,
player
yeah.
will miss 1 or 2 games. It's as simple as that. It's a ridiculous idea.
But one worth discussing at their level, Stephen, is it not, in Zurich? As Simon says, at least they're open to discussion.
It's a discussion, but it's just another thing that's going to spoil the game. At the start of the season, they were going to implement more yellow cards for time wasting. That happened for a small period of time.
No, it's still happening.
Is it still happening?
It is to a degree, yeah. It's calmed a little bit, but it is still happening. I watch so many games through work, and the level of discipline now from the officials is so much better and stringent and strict.
Okay.
I mean, there was a game at the weekend where a player literally threw his arm up as a protest. Can't even say it, as a protest, and he got booked within about 3 seconds. And you could see his face. He changed. He thought, I've done it again. Bum, nipped in the bud. Didn't do anything else for the rest of the game because he'd have been off.
Excellent. IFAB, everything's fine. You sin bin, you cool off.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.